On today's Star Wars lore video, we take a deep look at the Supremacy and its weapons. Hey guys, this is Eckhart Slaughter. Hello and welcome to another Star Wars lore video. Today we are taking a look at The Last Jedi and the weapons of the Supremacy. Many people who watch The Last Jedi notice that peculiarly the main weapons on the Supremacy seem to arc as they were fired. This doesn't really make sense. I mean, the ships were battling in the middle of space, so there's no gravity which should impact the lasers like this. We're going to be talking about that today and trying to find out whether there's a logical reason for why this happens. Now, does this phenomenon need a lore reason? Probably not, but let's see if we can come up with one anyway. First, however, let's look at things from a real-world perspective, and Star Wars space combat has always been inspired by World War II. The Last Jedi actually took this up a notch in my opinion with the Flying Fortress style giant bombers and Kylo Ren as sort of a fighting ace. It seems pretty clear that the shots arc so that the Supremacy looks like a sort of giant naval battleship shelling a faraway enemy. I actually really like this effect. It didn't bother me a whole lot during the movie. I thought it made the Supremacy look really large, powerful, and weighty. But still, lore and style are both important, so let's look at things from an in-universe perspective. First, we need some brief information about lasers. Despite their name, lasers aren't what we in the real world would call lasers. Rather, they're gases superheated into a plasma state. Keep this in mind because it does impact the analysis moving forward. But let's look at the actual question, what causes the arc? First of all, I think we can rule out gravity. There doesn't appear to be any planetary bodies nearby, and while the Supremacy itself would have some gravitational pull, as do all objects with mass, there's no real way that it would influence the turbolasers as we see on screen. Some have also suggested that the arc is simply a visual perspective thing, that our perspective of the shot is warped, but that's outside of my expertise and I don't really find that to be a very convincing argument. Another very common idea that I hear quite often is that the weapons were actually projectile based, not standard turbolasers. I actually really like the idea of the weapons having semi-guided projectiles within, but I don't really think that's the case here. We specifically hear them referred to as turbolasers, and the cross-section very clearly labels the weapons as single heavy turbolasers. To be fair though, we've never ever seen turbolasers on a scale like this. Look at the size of these cannons. Typically, Star Wars ships will use smaller turbolaser batteries, and the turbolaser bolts themselves from the Supremacy are very meaty. So while I am gonna rule out the possibility of projectiles, it's possible that these massive turbolasers use some sort of technology that we aren't familiar with. Let's look at the possibilities, and the first is that there's perhaps some sort of advanced targeting and guidance system within the weapons. Given the fact that the Supremacy is likely the most technologically advanced ship ever in the Star Wars universe, and the fact that the First Order specifically have been shown to possess advanced sensor technology, it's very possible that there's some sort of advanced targeting system associated with these weapons. Perhaps magnetism or something else is used to alter the weapon's trajectory mid-flight. I'm really not sure. Is there a purpose for this? Well, I think so. We know that ships in the Star Wars universe, when being pursued, and the Raddus specifically, put all of their shield energy towards the rear of the ship. By arcing the turbolasers, perhaps the First Order was trying to probe the shield for weak spots, or just hitting the Raddus in different areas so it couldn't concentrate all of its shields in one place. I don't know, this does make a lot of sense to me. It's also possible that the magnetic field associated with the ship's shield somehow interferes with turbolasers, and to compensate for that, you have to fire a little bit above or below the ship. Honestly, I don't know if this makes any sense. It doesn't seem consistent with what we've seen in the rest of the media, but perhaps that's one of the effects of fighting at a long distance, which is apparently the case in The Last Jedi. From a lore perspective though, I think the more likely scenario is the guidance system and probing the Raddus's shield. Or at least that could be the answer. Ultimately, Star Wars physics doesn't quite operate like we'd expect it to in the real world. We have sounds in space, fighters don't behave in a realistic way, And turbolasers have been shown to have a somewhat limited range, although there's not really any reason for that to be true. Perhaps when firing turbolasers in the Star Wars universe, for some reason you have to compensate, and that reason doesn't necessarily tie into a real-world physics answer. And if it bothers you, I just want to say I'm not saying you're wrong, but in a universe that operates based on the rule of cool, like Star Wars does, I think the arcing turbolaser fits. And if you stretch your imagination, you can even come up with a rational explanation. As it stands, that's all that we have. Again, I think the guidance system is the most likely answer, sort of like we see with TIE bombers and their proton loads. But let me know what you think down in the comments section. Is there an explanation that I missed? Which one do you think is most likely? Let me know all of that and any ideas you guys have for future videos. Thank you guys so much for watching. As always, this has been Eckhart's Ladder. May the Force be with you.